For the first time in the history of the event, FishOMania VI saw two former champions take their places in the final. Ian Turner from Worksop in Nottinghamshire took the winner's rostrum in the inaugural event in 1994. Northampton's Steve Ringer returned to Hayfield to defend the crown he won in 1998, becoming FishOMania's youngest ever champion. Would FishOMania VI turn into a battle of the Titans? Hayfield Lakes in South Yorkshire look to be in absolutely perfect conditions, but as in all match fishing competitions, the draw for pegs can be vital. Pegs 1, 2 and 3 have never proved winners on FishOMania, so Greg Pepper, Tim Bolland and Gary Brisland could struggle. Gary O'Shea, however, has drawn last year's winning peg on the island, peg 4. 5, 6 and 7 can still reach the island, but number 8 Steve Jackson may be out of it. Further along the lake, 15 and 16 look to be red-hot favourites with a huge bay where the fish can congregate. 11, Steve Ringer, not a favoured draw, but Steve fancies it. Every angler fishes from his own numbered platform, and the central island can play a vital role. Pegs 4 to 7 are within casting range of this natural sanctuary, and accurate casting could tie the shoals of fish down. With the breeze blowing up the lake from the high numbers, peg 6 in particular looks outstanding. But the casting will have to be spot on. Pegs 15 and 16 are away from the main crowds, and the fish down here may feel more secure, making them more catchable.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to not so sunny Nully for this year's Mitsubishi Motors FishOMania VI. We have 16 of the top fishermen in the country competing for that first prize and only prize of £25,000. Gentlemen, are you ready? The best of luck to you all, and let battle commence.
So we're off and running. Keith, what happens in these early stages?
Usually one or two things go wrong. You try and put some bait in and you're a bit nervous and the bait will jump out your pot. Or we saw with Steve Ringer a couple of years ago, his first cast actually went over the dividing cable in the middle of the lake. So nerves play a vital part, but if you've got a game plan, you've just got to stick to it and for the moment forget what everybody else is doing. You've got your own match to fish and the blinkers are on.
Do you think people will have come here perhaps yesterday and had a little look at things and had a tactic and come down this morning and had to change everything completely?
There will be one or two changes of tactics because it was very different yesterday. It was sort of nudging 80 degrees yesterday. This morning it's probably struggling to make 60 as we know up here. We're in the breeziest bit, aren't we? It's always lovely because we're air conditioned up here, but today it's colder. Yeah, so there might be one or two people less inclined to fish very close to the surface, looking maybe to get the fish a bit deeper or looking for those important ledges on the bottom.
Dick, would you expect to see lots of different tactics being employed out here depending on where they are on the lake?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be obviously some people make decisions earlier on, as you've just suggested, and change. And I think that, but basically, I think it's going to be a feeder match. Certainly, with the amount of people on the bank, it stops fish from moving close enough to catch any quantity. I think on Paul Keith. So, and you know, I think that I'm actually going for another Steve Cook.
Well, we've just seen Steve Jackson here actually lose a fish. That must, well,
that's an early fish,
yeah,
isn't it?
That
So
was
at least
straight away.
yeah.
First chuck on the feeder,
Yeah.
the tip's gone round. Nobody really fancied that peg. He's hooked a fish, got it to the net, and there's nothing worse, you know, Dick.
That's right.
Lose a fish at the net.
Did you see what it was there, Keith?
It was a proper fish. It was almost certainly a carp. It wasn't a big one, but it's 2 or 3 pounds, and you think, right, that's it. Everybody else is playing catch up.
Right.
He's not in a fancied peg, you know. Well,
I think that's what happens though regularly. You know, you draw the fancied peg, and like Keith said, especially on a day like this, nerves are going to play a big part. And the guys that settle down quickest are the ones that were not under any pressure. They've not drawn the best area, or they think they haven't, and they get in, they settle down, and they can draw fish into that swim very quickly, can't they? And take at least an initial advantage. They can have an early lead, perhaps for an hour, and if the guy on the best pegs then settle down and they get into a routine, then they're the ones that you've got to, they'll catch up quickly and go past if that favoured peg works.
Steve Ringer got off to a flyer last year, didn't he, Keith? And he won it with what, 50 or 60 pounds worth of fish in the end. What do you think will be the winning total today?
Oh, you asked me some really easy questions. Jeff Stelling, come back. Dom, it's going to be a very, very tough match to call. It could be £25. Equally, I think the fish could just hold up, and if they do, then we could have a massive weight. I'd hedge my bets and go about, I reckon 40 to 40 20 kilos. 20 kilos will be a good weight, won't it?
Well, at FishOMania, we know that £25,000 is up for grab for first prize, but for the first time, the fishermen have a chance to win a 4x4 with the Golden Fishy Award. And here to actually mark the fish, Robin Goforth, you're here to, the owner of Hayfields Lakes, you're here to independently witness that this is all above board?
That's correct, yes, I'm here to independently witness the marking of this fish for the prize of a £36,000 Shogun 4x4.
And Dr. Bruno Broughton, the fisherman's expert, you're here to mark the fish.
That's it, yes.
And what are we going to do to mark the fish?
We're going to put a small quantity of blue dye beneath one of its scales on its belly. It's perfectly harmless.
So it's not a tag at all? Or?
No, it's just a mark. It'll only take a minute or so, and that mark will still be there tomorrow.
Shall we go for it?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of fish is this?
It's a mirror carp.
How big is he?
It's about 2 pounds or so. Very lively.
Yes. And who caught him?
Robin did. So, and just wait till he calms down. There he is. And all I'm going to do is just slip the syringe under a scale, release a quantity of dye.
And that isn't going to affect the fish at all for tomorrow?
You can see there's a lovely blue dye spot on there.
Yeah, and there you can see the blue dye right there, and that's going to be worth a 4x4.
That's him. Still very lively.
Shall we put him back in the water? Good. What are the chances of him being caught?
Pretty good. I certainly hope he is.
There's the fish, and there's the blue dye. And and the golden fishy is in the water.
We have had some action on peg 9. Let's find out what's happened.
That's Steve Cook on peg 9. It looks like he's using the floating pole method. There's his little carp. Well, there's our first fish. Cookie's caught it, and that's a bit of a surprise. I didn't really think that up in the water lark could work too well today, but Cookie's done his homework here. He's a local lad, and if he makes that work, there could be a huge bag of fish on the cards, because that is a real big weight method.
Dick, you thought they'd be fishing a little deeper than that as well?
Yeah, I thought that conditions weren't ideal for that. Generally, it's when you've got warm weather that you can actually catch more fish on the surface, but I mean, Steve is a local guy. I mean, he fishes a lot of competitions for carp anyway in this area. And that's why, I mean, I think he's got a good chance today.
Yeah. Peg 9 wasn't one of the favoured ones we thought, Keith.
Cookie wasn't happy with it. I spoke to him last night. He's a good lad. In fact, I had to dance with his wife. I had the great pleasure of dancing with his wife last night, and I think she'd had a drop of wine because Steve said when she's like this, she's harder to handle than a 2 pound eel. But he was having a really good time last night, Steve. Very, very confident. Is that a fish there?
Peg 7.
Tim Hayes. Yeah. Now, Tim actually last year caught the biggest fish of the event. He won the trophy for that. And he's a very calm angler, extremely nervous when you talk to him, but when he's got a rod in his hand, those nerves just disappear. The concentration is enormous. There's a decent fish too. You see that, but as soon as it comes to the surface, down it goes.
I just wonder how many of them are fishing braid, or is it allowed on?
Yeah, anything's in there, yeah. And if they're using braid, you were talking about the lack of shock absorption, well, when it gets in closer, that's even more critical.
Worse. That's right.
Come on, fishy.
There he
what
is.
a gorgeous fish. That's one of the Hayfield specials. Tremendous round of applause from the crowd as well. That's a ghost koi, that is, Dom.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well done, Tim Hayes. He's caught a second fish. Wonderful shots there as well of the fish just popping out of the water. Keith, tell us a little bit more about about the lake itself and about how these guys are going to fish it.
Right, well, we've got one or two things I can use to demonstrate it here. This is sort of a cutaway of a section of the lake with the way the bank slopes down. Now, the fish will look to feed at the bottom of this shelf here. Now, all the fish will eventually come into there, but more especially late in the day, because one thing about match anglers, they're creatures of habit as much as the fish are, and when match is finished, they throw the bait away. So the fish know that at the bottom of this shelf, that's where the bait winds up. They also know that if they're in an aggressive mood, the food hits the water first, and fish will come up in the surface, up into the surface film. Sometimes a small roach will come up first, and roach from Gold North and perch, and their activities will bring the carp up underneath to sea. Now, when they come up, you've got to use big baits like Steve Cook we know is using a pellet, and that will bring the big fish up, that only the big fish can handle the pellet. Now, the reason that the island is so important, if you look, you can see there's a big point in the centre. Now, peg 5 is about here. It's a 50-metre chuck for peg 4, which isn't difficult, but that's a big calm area, whereas last year there was a good ripple. Now this year the ripple's here, and I've got a feeling that Chris Cooper on peg 6 and Tim Hayes on peg 7, not necessarily straight away, but in the last 2.5 or 3 hours, they'll be getting serious response to their feed going in that area. And there's a decent fish coming in too. That's Tim again. Tim Hayes is obviously our big fish man. He's called a big fish there, big fish earlier.
The klaxon has gone, and that means that we're in for our first weigh-in. And it looks like Tim Hayes could have a fair bit of ammunition there. Let's find out what's happening at the weigh-in, shall we? Liz Hobbs is down there.
Well, this is Ian Turner's weigh-in. He's from Worksop, and he's been steadily catching right since the klaxon went actually this morning. He's got some tench in there, some roach, a couple of smallish carp, but he's consistently catching the whole time. He's turned and gone slightly offshore, so instead of just being on the straight bank, he's actually followed where the wind has gone, and it seems that these smaller fish are definitely making their way in this direction. So very consistent here, Ian. The winner, of course, from 1994, and he's looking to make it the double. Wife Linda and his son Glenn are both here. We've got one in the net still, apparently. Oh gosh, this weigh-in's very important. It's the first weigh-in. And Ian is he's got a beady eye on that net. No, it was a bit of tape in the net. We're ready for the weigh now. Let's have a look and see what Ian Turner from Worksop's got. Over a kilo.
1 kilo. It's 560.
1 kilo, 560. So not a bad start for Ian Turner then. And where he's turning and just fishing off the bank, it's making a big difference. All he's doing is just reeling them in as fast as he possibly can. None of the other pegs are catching, but peg 16 we'll have a look at in a minute, because it looks like they're catching at that end as well.
Welcome back to FishOMania 6. Let's take a look at the first leaderboard. Steve Cook's roared off to a great start, but Tim Hayes on fancy peg 7 is pushing him. Past champions Steve Ringer and Ian Turner are virtually neck and neck in 5th and 6th, and at this early stage, just 30 minutes gone, it's no surprise to see 6 anglers still fishless.
Steve Cook, we are understanding, is about to land himself, has landed himself another one. That looks like quite a big one, Keith.
It's a kilo and a bit. Yeah, that's probably 1.2 kilo. That puts him up over 6 kilos now. That's 13 pounds in old money. 6 bags of sugar he's weighing in already. You know, you wouldn't like to carry that around all day, would you?
So you think he's probably managed to get rid of the roach?
That looks. The carp will get rid of the roach for him. He'll put the feed in. Those carp will come up and bash the roach up no end. Yeah.
Alan, have you had a chance to see much of Steve Cook yet?
No, I know Steve quite well. I mean, I don't want to say what I said last year. Last year I quite fancied Steve to do well in the competition, and I think, you know, he was doing well after probably an hour of the match, and I said that comment and all of a sudden he stopped catching, and that was the end of it. So I had a little conversation with him last night, and he grabbed me by the throat and he said, "Don't mention the truth what I'm doing." So I've got to be a little bit careful.
Why was it you fancied him last year then?
I know Steve, and I know, you know, he's been local to where I fish, you know, for many years, and his friend has already won it, Ian Turner, and I'm sure you know they've spoke quite a lot about the competition. And he is a very, very good angler. I mean, not so long back in the Ultimate League, he came second to another local angler, Jamie Mason, and he's proved he's got the potential to win these type of competitions.
Well, he's been fishing for some time. He's 40 years old now, Steve Cook. Comes from Retford. He's a storeman by trade. There's his biggest fish, and he's a Kim Basinger and an only fools and horses man, so can't be all bad, can it?
And he would have liked last night with Edwin Starr in the cabaret, the Motown music, and my voice is just a little bit harsher than normal this morning. And, unfortunately, I know all Edwin Starr's songs too.
880 grams.
Well, as Alan said last year, Steve got off to a flyer and then went pear-shaped for him. He's still got 680. That's still an exceptional weight. It's over 14 pounds.
Now this is peg 14. That's Rob Hitchens.
860.
That looks a little bigger.
Yeah, big 2 kilo there, coming up to 3 kilo. Rob had a few fish to go in already. Rob already had a few fish in the bag, so that'll put him up close to 4 kilos.
Alan, what did you make of Steve's second catch there, and do you read anything into the fact that it was, what, almost half of his first?
Well, he's had a good burst for the first half an hour. I mean, it slowed down on him a little bit. I don't know, everybody's still feeling the way. It's very early in the match, and a lot of these methods, what people have picked, take time to work as well. Now, somebody's got a good catch there. But
good fish going in. It's 2 decent fish in the bag already.
Still very early.
Early days, everyone jockeying for position.
Now that could be Steve Jackson. If that's peg 8, that's Steve Jackson, providing we're not looking at it sideways. And there's 3.5 kilos there.
This is how things look after 2 weigh-ins. Steve Cook still leading on peg 9. Paul Keeley is in second place on 16, up to 4.34. Steve Jackson has pulled himself all the way up to third place from peg 8 with 4.06 kilos. Also up there on the leaderboard, Rob Hitchens, Tim Hayes and Steve Ringer on 3 something, and Carl Redgrave and Ian Turner are there as well. Let's take a check on Mark Tottingham, who is on peg 12. Mark has landed his first fish, we're hearing.
Here's another one. He's fishing cookie style. He's got the big waggler fishing up in the water, and that's a tench. Very unusual to catch tench up in the water. You do on very, very hot weather, they'll come up sometimes for small baits, but I would think Tots is fishing a bit more positive than that. And to catch one on a big float, fishing up in the water, is quite unusual.
Quite unusual. Another one of the younger competitors here at FishOMania VI, only 27 years old. He's a welder by trade, likes his chips and lager, and they call him Tots. That's his first catch of the day. That'll do him no end of good, won't it, Alan?
Yeah, I would have thought it will. I mean, I'm just trying to see where Rob Hitchens is. I don't know whether Rob's just playing a fish down there. I think he's going to be danger man, Rob Hitchens. That's just the way I feel at the moment, because he's the local expert. The conditions are better now than they've ever been for this competition. And I'd have a sneaking feeling that Rob Hitchens is going to come through the field.
Here's some action for you down on peg 7. This is Tim Hayes. What's he landing there, Keith?
That's another decent carp, and we know he's already got. He's up there with the leaders, and he's got the biggest fish of the match so far, until Rob weighs in his one that Liz reckons is bigger. But if he keeps catching fish like that, this year we're seeing a tight match. There's going to be a few also runs, there always is, but there's a lot of action. It's very mobile. The top 10, if you see Mark Tottingham catch a fish, that'll bring him up there. There's 10 people now with a couple of kilos at least in the net, and it only needs half hour, a good half hour, and they're up the front.
Peg 6, Chris Cooper, the man from the RAF, the Commodore. Looks as though he's landed a reasonable catch there, Keith.
Don't say started flying, can we? Now, he's in an area I thought would produce a few fish, but it looked like he caught that on the pole, which is a bit of a surprise. I thought the fish had come from there on the feeder. Well, we're going to find out soon enough. That's the hooter. That's
Weigh in
third,
3.
Yep, third half hour gone. And I think that we're going to see some subtle changes in the leaderboard here. I think we're going to see 2 anglers making a move. One of them was Alan Scotthorn's tip, Rob Hitchens. I think he's going to be making a distinct move up the leaderboard. And the other one that I think we might see also making his move is Tim Hayes.
Rob Hitchens on 14, Tim Hayes on peg 7. 2 other people will certainly be interested in then at this weigh-in. They're all chasing, of course, Steve Cook on peg 9, who had over 6.5 kilos. This is the weigh-in from Steve Ringer, the reigning champion, on peg 11. And we wonder how he's going to get on today. He's certainly keen to do well. Peg 11, he said at the draw that he wanted a low peg, Keith, but perhaps came down here this morning, saw the weather conditions and felt a little better about things.
He didn't want 1, 2 or 3. I know that. He wanted the island. That's where he wanted, because his technique is so good. His casting ability is great. He'd have been hitting the same spot every time, which we're not certain if they're getting exactly in the right hole. But Steve Ringer would have. But he's, as I said earlier, the man, the methods for this water.
Now, Greg Pepper on peg 1, we think has landed his first fish probably of the day. He certainly had a blank earlier on. It was always thought of as a pretty rough old peg to draw because of the crowd, the people walking around the peg on their way to see the other anglers as well. Greg from Stoke-on-Trent, another engineer. A northern nutter, Keith.
Well, there's another northern nutter, Jeff Stelling, described that peg last year as the peg of death, and that actually inspired Kieran Prenderville to write an episode of a BBC television series about fishing. So, yeah, and I must say it's living up to its reputation completely. Yet, if only Greg knew that about 50 yards diagonally to his right, there are so many fish. If you fell in, you'd come out with enough to win FishOMania in your pockets. It's absolutely loaded with fish in this corner directly below our studio.
Wow. He probably hasn't got anything long enough to reach out there, has he?
Well, he's doing well because he's keeping feeding, and sooner or later those fish will decide they're hungry and they'll go looking for feed. And as I said earlier, every splash to a fish is a potential meal.
Mark, if you were out there, which one would you want to be sitting behind?
Well, I've had a bet on Gary O'Shea and Paul Keeley because Paul is a team member. But I think that Hitchin might come good in the end. I don't know. He's got inside knowledge of all these pegs on this lake.
Well, Gary O'Shea's going okay on peg 4, but generally the low pegs are not doing well again this year. And this is the situation at the top of the leaderboard after 3 weigh-ins. Steve Cook is still leading there from Tim Hayes. Hayes on peg 7 with 7.27. Rob Hitchens up into 3rd place. Steve Ringer steadily moving up the leaderboard. On peg 11, he's got just over 7 kilos. Paul Keeley's there or thereabouts, as is Michael Murgo, Steve Jackson, and then a little distance to Carl Redgrave in 8th place. Peg 15. Keith, what does it look like he's got there?
That's a big fish. Again, he looks like he's had it on the floating pole because he's got very, very little line attached to the end of his rod. And that's a serious fish. That's got to be, the way his landing net's bending, that might be £6. Let's see. Got to be very careful with fish that big, because if you pick them out to put them in your keep net, they have, as we saw with the golden fishy yesterday, have a proclivity for diving back into the lake of their own volition. So what you generally do is tip the landing net inside the keep net and sort of flop it out. Now he's being brave and picking it up. He's a braver man than me. No, he's thought better of it. There's probably getting on for £6 there, I would think. That's a good fish.
Gary O'Shea on peg 4 is also landing something which looks sizable.
It's another rod bender. But we saw on that leaderboard, Don, we said there'd be people making a move, and the classic one, the one we didn't mention, Mick Murgo, was sitting there with less than a kilo and has now got close to 7 kilo, is Ian Turner. And that's a decent fish on the pole.
Ian Turner, the 1994 champion.
And you can see that's actually his elastic cutting through the water. I don't know if you know how this all works, Tom. I'm sure you do. But you've got an elasticated section on the end of your pole, and that's the shock absorber for the fish. And that fish has got a lot of elastic out. It's got line under the water and the elastic.
Oh, we'll try and follow this. This is the tricky stage, Keith.
Now, if that was on a wide angle, you'd see that fish has just made a run of about 9 or 10 yards, and the elastic has just kept it on the hook. If that was just through to the end of the pole, either the hook would have pulled out or the line would have broken, without a doubt. That's going at real high speed, you know. Welcome back, and with 2 of the 5 hours gone, the leaderboard's really starting to take shape. Local expert Rob Hitchin has leapfrogged his way to the top. Steve Jackson's closing the gap on Steve Cook, rising from 7th to 3rd in half an hour. And it's still just 2 places separating our former champions, Ringer and Turner.
Steve Cook, we're hearing, has got another one coming in. It looks like another big one, Keith.
That's another lump, yeah. There's best part of 3 kilos there, Bob, I would think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it looks like the pole is now pulling back a bit, doesn't it? And I think it'll be one on the pole in the end.
In previous years, the fish have moved out as the match has progressed.
Yeah.
This year, they seem to be coming closer.
Michael Murgo is also not doing too badly, thank you very much. Let's take a check on his progress. Has he got something there, Bob?
Yes, he's got another. Looks like he's got another good fish on. You can see the elastic out. It's the pole men now that are going to dominate. I don't know. Steve might come back with his feeder, but yeah, that's another good fish.
Michael Murgo on peg number 5. Keith, what did you reckon to his chances?
Well, Mick was casting to the island and he wasn't happy about it. The point of the island isn't the best place. If you can get either side of it, it's okay. But the angles from where the peg's positioned are very difficult to get alongside the reed beds where the fish live. Mick struggled. He caught a couple of bits on the pole close in. As soon as he went on the floating pole, 2 fish straight away. Now that's what's made the difference. Once you catch a couple, you know there's some fish about, you then get more regular with your feed, you build up. But I can't stress highly enough, and this bloke next to me, Bob Nudd, is the greatest feeder in modern fishing. You've got to put bait in. If you don't put it in, you won't catch it. I've seen Bob feed for 4 hours and catch nothing, and in the last hour make a real play, for, not win the match, but make a real play for the match and win your section. I'll never forget that day on the Rother it was, down in Sussex. But it's feed that's everything.
Well, it's the most important part of fishing, and this is where they get a problem, and this is where good anglers who can handle the carp quickly and get them in. So that, see, these can't really feed while they're holding their pole and catching these carp. It's difficult because they're fishing out too far. So they've got to get them in as quick as they can, get the pole out there and start to feed before the fish disperse. But once you start to catch on this method up in the water, then usually they're there. They won't go, they'll still be there. As long as they can get them in quick enough and start feeding over the top again.
What is the knack then, Bob, to getting them in quickly?
Good old bottle again.
Yeah, you've got a fairly strong elastic, the right elastic, without tearing out of the fish. You know, the elastic's got to come out without, you know, just to give, without tearing out of the fish. And this is where the experts like Rob, who fishes all the time, will come in.
The quickest angler I've ever seen with fish, without doubt, was Will Raisin.
Yes, oh, he's just deadly.
Will's father owns a fishery down in Hampshire, and Will fishes it all the time. He catches quality carp, and I've never, ever seen anyone catch them quicker. He loses a couple, but he lands the fish he lands that much quicker. He sort of has an extra half an hour fishing over anybody else. He's just amazing. He sees the fish, the net goes in and he has a go at it straight away.
Yeah, he sort of gets them even when they're under the water.
Traditionally, you get a fish laying on its side, nice and steady, you put the landing net under it. But Will has a go at the tails. He sees the tail, knows where the head is, and whack, in goes the net.
Another big fish there from Michael. Look, they're really good sized fish, so I can see these weights really increasing.
And he's letting it have a breather to calm down, presumably, before he puts it in the keep.
No,
just swinging a bit more.
Did you notice he fed?
Good move.
Most important, you've got to feed as soon as you can. He'll be thinking about the next fish. He won't be thinking about that one. That's gone. He's thinking about the next fish now.
A little bit like snooker.
That's right. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, you have to plan ahead all the time.
He's got a red. He'd like a black next, wouldn't he? Really?
No, what he really wants is a blue. He wants to fish with that blue mark on. He wants to be driving over the new 4x4. Thank you very much.
But he might be happy. He might be happy enough with the 25,000.
Yeah, that'll pay his insurance for a few years, won't it?
So he's feeding again. He hasn't even shipped out yet. He's fed twice and he hasn't shipped out yet. So 2 lots of feed out there. There should be some more fish there.
Does the old catapult take much practice, or is that fairly easy?
Quite easy. When you're loose feeding, once you get used to it, it's a fairly soft elastic, and once you get used to it, you can get really accurate. It'll be spreading the bait about a bit.
So now 3 hours gone, 2 to go, and Steve Cook's got clear air between himself and the rest of the field. Steve Jackson continues his upward motion, but Rob Hitchin appears to have peaked. Tim Hayes is bravely hanging on, and Mick Murgo's giving it his best shot, but there's still nothing between Steve Ringer and Ian Turner.
Applause in the background because Steve Jackson's landed another one, but for the moment, let's have a quick word with the man who's out front. Steve, it's still going well for you?
Yeah, I had a real good start, and then I had a funny spell in after like first hour where I couldn't get a fish for some reason. A lot of fish there, but for some reason they just wouldn't take the bait. I was getting daft bites, I wasn't getting proper bites, and I couldn't work it out. But even now, I'm having little spells when I catch a few fish. There's still a lot of fish there, but they won't come under my pole. So I sort of get a few fish quick, come off at pole, go out on waggler, and see if I can get a quick one with that. But they just won't have waggler at all. But there's a lot of fish out there. So I go on waggler and then come back on pole and hopefully pinch a few fish and keep pinching a few fish up till the end if I can.
Yeah, you switched from the pole early on because I think you thought it was putting the fish underneath off, didn't you?
That's right, yeah. I don't think they'll swim under. They're not confident under pole, especially now it's gone flat. It's even worse. But there's a lot of fish out there. They're just not confident coming under pole. They're sort of hanging back from the pole. So I'll go back on waggler again in a minute and fish that 5 or 10 minutes, let them get confident, and then hopefully go back out and pick up a couple of fish again, and just keep doing that up till the end, hopefully.
Were you aware of all that stuff going on behind you over the weights?
I wasn't sure when it said it was 10 kilo the weight. I didn't think there was 10 kilo in it, but obviously I'm more interested in what's happening in front of me than in my nets at the minute. No, I'm not fazed by it at all. I mean, if it's as long as it's right, that's the main thing, and everybody else's is right, then it's a problem, is there? You know, we don't want to be winning it by default sort of thing. But no, I'm not. No worry to me at all. That if it's meant to be me, it's meant to be me, isn't it? That's like I said yesterday.
Well, if it's meant to be you, it's Peg 9 that could be the winner. We shall see. The man who's chasing you is sitting just about 15-20 yards to our right, and that's Steve Jackson, and Gary's with him at the moment.
And a picture of concentration, I can tell you. Let me just tell you a couple of things about this guy. If you remember at the top of the show, I asked him what line he used. He said, "Do you come here often?" I also asked him if he treated his line. He said, "Yeah, I bite an ice cream once a week." He's an absolute comedian, this boy. I'm going to dive in because I've got a couple of questions to ask him. His sister's sitting behind him, and your sister Linda told me a few stories about you when you were a boy. You and your sister used to have maggot races.
We did. She's sad. I'll get her back for that. Thanks ever so much.
What did you used to do? Just put them on the kitchen floor and let them go?
Something like that.
Now, most fishermen, don't point looking at her, no point looking at her. Most fishermen, you included, put maggots in the fridge. We all do that and we know why we do it. She came home one day and you'd put them in the bath.
I can't remember that at all. No, I think she's having a little bit of a fit there because I can't remember that at all. No, never put anything in. I put a perch in the bath once. My first ever perch. I brought it home and put it in the bath, and it was swimming around the bath for a day.
We've all done that. Now, joking aside, it's the Steve and Steve show. You're literally neck and neck. I mean, we've got an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes to go. I mean, can you feel the tension? You know, we're talking to you more and more often. You can see the scores. You can hear what's happening. Can you feel the adrenaline?
No, not at all. No, I'm just really enjoying the day and just trying to remember every bit that happened. You know, it's just great. I mean, Steve might win 25 grand, but I'm better looking. So, I mean, simple as that.
I think there'll be an argument over that one. You just took. What did you catch?
Have you had a look at him?
I know him from way back. You just caught a little ghostie there. The ghosties, they don't weigh too much, but they're a bit of a pain in the backside because they take a long time to come in, don't they?
It was hooked in the fin, that's why it took a long time. I thought it was hooked in the mouth, but the line was running down the side of it, and it was actually hooked in the fin that goes underneath the fish, which has probably got a special name, but I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, I haven't fished for a while. I'm sitting there at water level looking across your swimming, and I can see so much fish activity. This is an angling paradise, this lake, isn't it?
Yeah, it's stuffed full of fish, absolutely stuffed full. I mean, a lot of venues would stop, you wouldn't be able to catch because of the crowds, but I mean, there's just so many fish in here. I mean, the tip just hasn't stopped all day. It's just bouncing around all the time.
Which is a hint for me to get out of the way, because when he strikes, he's going to take my head off. It's a fantastic lake, this place, and I hope you guys at home are enjoying this. It doesn't get much better.
Certainly doesn't. Wonderful stuff. Thanks very much, Gary. It's the Steve and Steve show, as he says. Steve Jackson and Steve Cook at the moment 1 and 2 on the leaderboard. And Keith, do you see a pattern emerging? Do you sense that this may be a crucial stage of this match?
Well, it's noticeable that the wind's dropped. We're noticing up here it's still quite chilly, but there's not the breeze that there was earlier, and that I think has stopped the smaller fish that Ian Turner and Paul Keeler were catching on the end. But as Dick Clegg said, if you remember in the very first segment, Dick Clegg said the fish don't always move straight away with the wind. They'll sometimes take their time to follow the wind. The wind's been blowing this way, the fish are following it. The bait that went into those middle pegs, 8 and 9, has obviously captivated them, and they're there chewing away.
So it's 1 and 2 on the leaderboard. Steve Cook leading from Steve Jackson at the moment, but an hour and 35 minutes or so of this match to go, and £25,000 at the end of that will be going to someone. Will it be one of these two? There goes the hooter. Keith, would you be expecting, I think we're hoping to see Steve Jackson and Steve Cook, would you be expecting any major changes at this one, or do you think it's...
I'm not expecting any major changes. I think they'll both be consolidating, but I think there'll be 4 or 5 anglers consolidating up there.
Let's hear from Bryn Law, who's down there at that weigh-in. Bryn.
OK, well, let's have a look how Steve Cook has fared in the last half an hour or so. It's been a little bit quieter up here. We'll see how much quieter in just a moment. How many have we got in the bag there? 3 in the bag. There's the biggest. Let's have a couple more, slightly smaller, but they all count at this crucial stage, I suppose, don't they? So this is the Steve Cook weigh-in. Let's see if he's going to stay at the top of the leaderboard. Let's hope the figures are correct this time, guys.
2 kilos.
2 kilos.
250.
Back on the lake, on Lucy's Lake. Gary O'Shea, I think, who's on peg number 4. That was the peg, remember, that won it last year for Steve Ringer. But it's interesting, isn't it, Keith, that it's 8 and 9 today?
Yeah, and I definitely feel that the wind has played an important part, as I said, not only in putting a ripple on the lake, but in keeping the number of spectators down. It's not made the fish run to the island like they did last year. Bright sunshine, clear sky. It's a decent fish, you know. That's a decent fish. They get their heads down, and that vortex is caused by their tail as they're diving for the bottom. And they look for any sort of snag or obstruction. There's the fish in the net now. That's a good fish.
Julie, have you fished here presumably at some
Yeah,
stage, have you? How did you find it?
Great. These sort of fisheries nowadays are great for anyone who wants to start fishing. You can come, you can catch. I mean, I was talking to Sandra Scott on earlier. We thought one angler was catching roach. We think they might have been eyed. You know, you just never know what you're going to catch next. And you know, you can see there, great fisheries.
Is that another carp on?
That was looked like a ghost koi, and he's caught that just in time. Now that's a real strategically good time to catch a fish. It's like a goal a minute before half time. It's difficult for anglers to come back. He might have been weighing in 2 kilos. He's now going to be weighing in 4 or 5. It might be his only fish. If he hadn't have had that fish, he'd have been really down. Now he's got it to count. It's just a little boost. It's amazing what things will do for your confidence, and Julie will know this, Dom, you can think fish onto the hook. If you think positive, your tip is likely to go around, and they're just such beautiful creatures, aren't they? Look at that.
I hope they're checking the tummies as they come out, actually.
Well, I'll tell you, if I was one of those fishing, I might be.
Well, it is exciting stuff, isn't it? And there's a possibility you could forget it. Probably not, though.
Yeah, probably not.
Let's see how this one shapes up. Well,
that's best part of 4 kilo. It would only have been 1.5 kilos without that other fish. That's psychologically important.
That certainly won't hurt. Let's go to Steve Jackson's weigh-in. Gary Norman's down there. Gary, what can you see?
Well, there's a couple of ghosties in here. Dave Kent is the steward. Let's have a look and see what we've got in here. Beautiful condition fish, this. That's the one that he wasn't even looking when the tip of the rod went round. I think he let him back for a sandwich or something. It happens to all us fishermen. Next thing you know, your rod's in the water. But it's on the bank anyway.
Yeah.
That's it, just the 2. Let's see what we get to. It's under 3.
2 kilos 640. 2 kilos 640.
Welcome back to FishOMania VI. Allow me to introduce you to some of the real stars of the show.
It's not that tranquil, believe it or not, down at Hayfield Lakes today. It is intensely fierce competition, and Steve Jackson is right up there amongst them. He's competing hard with Steve Cook for the title of FishOMania VI champion. That's the situation after 8 weigh-ins. We have approximately 45 minutes to go before we know who's going to be this year's champion. Let's get around the peg, shall we? I know you were explaining this the reasons behind people catching late in a match earlier on with Bob Nudd, but just for people who may not have been watching earlier on, can you just go over that again, Keith?
Well, there's several reasons. One is matches are fished at the worst possible time. They're fished when the sun's at its highest in the sky. When the sun goes lower, the fish are more likely to feed. So you're looking at the last hour there, because when the sun's straight overhead, fish haven't got eyelids. They'll stop looking around so much. Also, towards the end of a match, fish, they're not silly creatures. They know that at 3 o'clock every Saturday or every Sunday afternoon, a load of bait gets thrown in at the end of most matches. The fish come into the bank to take advantage of that. They're ready for feed. So you throw bait at the water, you make it splash, which you normally wouldn't do. And the fish go, oh, it's pack up time, let's have a munch. And
so it's almost a habit that they can't get out of, and that's why it suits the fishermen. We've got a catch there, and it's the man in the lead, Steve Cook.
That's
not
just
too big,
fish,
but
no,
what's he got there?
That's a little carp. That'll be, I don't know, 12 ounces or so, which is 0.3 of a kilo. That's better than a poke in the eye with a stick.
It certainly is. It'll keep his spirits up. Steve Cook. Let's go to peg 4. Gary O'Shea has been fishing this one. Remember, this was the one. This was the peg that Steve Ringer fished off last year when he won FishOMania. And Gary O'Shea has got a bite.
Has it got a blue belly? Has it got a blue belly? Let's have a look. Show us, Gary. Turn it over. No, he's had a look. No, completely blue free.
The hooter goes, and we wait to see whether Steve Cook will have increased his lead, whether he'll hold on to it. Let's go down to Bryn Law.
Well, we've got another fish coming in here, I think, for Steve Cook. If you look in the background, you'll probably see Steve Jackson's pulling one in as well. That's how tense it's getting down here now. That's how close it is. The lead has been whittled down a little over the last hour or so of Steve Cook, but he's still out in front, and this one could be crucial now. I think they'll wait for the weigh-in to make sure that he's pulled this one in first. They'll wait and delay the weigh-in until this fish comes out of the water for Steve Cook. We wait to see what sort of size it is, but he's pulled a couple out in the last 20 minutes or so. The applause you hear in the background is for Steve Jackson successfully landing another one, but Steve Cook is about to match him here. It's fighting a little as it comes in towards the shore, but Steve Cook will be delighted that the penultimate weigh-in will feature just one more fish in it. He's got a couple in there already. He hasn't done too badly over the last quarter of an hour or so, Steve Cook. He's edging ever closer to that FishOMania title. That's a good size fish, and listen to the roar of appreciation from Steve Cook's large fan club standing behind us here. The crowds are really deep, and we can now get the bag straight out of the water. And let's stay with this for the weigh-in. We've got the weigh-in of Steve Cook here. He knows that if there's a good weight in this bag, he could be so close to £25,000 as the FishOMania champion. This could be a crucial weigh-in for Steve Cook's hopes of winning this. We spoke to him about 20 minutes ago. He had gone a little slow at that stage, but things have picked up since over here on Peg 9, and now the vital moments in many senses. Perhaps this will determine where the FishOMania title goes this year. Steve Cook landing one just a few seconds ago, and let's see what we've got flapping away inside the bag now. There's a great crowd around us, and everybody on tenterhooks waiting to see what that weight will be. That's a lovely little bit of poetry, isn't it, this late in the afternoon? That's 2, and there's a couple more in there yet as the rain suddenly starts coming down quite heavily. But I don't think Steve Cook will mind that too much at the moment. He won't even notice it, I'm sure.
That's it.
4 in the bag. Yep. So let's have a look and see what Steve Cook's weight is. Let's have a little look now. Had the problems with the weighing machine. Here we go, let's have a look.
2 kilos, 800.
2 kilos, 800 on that one for Steve Cook. That's a good little bit of fishing for Steve Cook in the last half an hour or so. 2 kilos, 800, and let's see whether the next weigh-in will take us further on.
Here we go. Peg 8, Steve Jackson. Psychologically a good move. He's just brought, I don't know if you saw it, just brought another fish in as the rain absolutely tips down, but it's psychologically very good, because if Cook's catching one and Jackson's catching one and they can both see each other, doesn't do either of them any harm psychologically. Now that was the fish he's just caught. There's some more carp in it. There should be a barbel in there somewhere.
There's a barbel, yes.
Yeah, there's a roach. There's definitely a barbel in there, yeah. For those of you that think barbel are, there's a little barbel. Those of you think barbel belong in rivers, there's quite a few in lakes, and they go quite some size. Keith will talk to you about that. Unusual, but now this is the crucial part. What does it weigh? Well, it's between 2 and 3. Just under 2.6.
Peg 8, Mick.
Let's listen in.
Peg 8, 2 kilos, 570. 2 kilos, 570.
Steve Cook is on his way to achieving his ambition of becoming FishOMania champion and getting his sports car as well. Will he be the man to walk away with £25,000 in just about 20 minutes or so, or will it be Steve Jackson? They are side by side on Lucy's Lake, pegs 9 and 8. And Keith, how do you see it now?
I honestly believe it's a 2-horse race. I can't see. Mickey Murgo's done a miracle from that peg. He's produced a fantastic performance. We've hardly seen him, but he's crept up there. He's got 19 kilo. That's over 40 pound of fish. That'll win probably 75% of the competition held this weekend. But those two, I think they're just out of his reach now. But Jacko, we know, has caught one. I look round just now, he was standing up playing another. I can't see Steve Cook catching because the way he catches, he's not so visible to me. But Jacko's definitely caught 2 more fish.
This is a decent fish. It's banging like mad. Well, you guys at home know what that means. Gets its head down, keeps turning, goes the opposite way, and he's playing this very carefully.
Just a small fish there for Steve Cook, but I know Steve Jackson's got a much bigger fish. Still backwinding, look, that fish is still running. Now Steve's going to be aware that he's got to get this fish in the net before the final whistle goes. He doesn't want the Dickie Carr syndrome. We spoke about Dickie Carr at FishOMania 1. He lost that fish with a minute to go, cost him 25 grand. That's got to be in the net before the whistle goes.
He's got less than 5 minutes to do it. Should he be able to do that, Keith? 5 minutes, if it's a big one?
Would I be able to do it or not? I don't know.
Feeling like he must feel?
That's a big fish. It could well be that he may have hooked it just outside its mouth. That tends to make them, you can't get a direct pull on them. And they can kite, it's called kiting, they just kite off. You know, like you use a kite in the wind. Well, my heart's going 1,000,000 to 1. The fish is going down the side, it'll go for the reeds, it'll do everything. And because he knows there's not long to go, it'll fight harder.
Will his coach be telling him exactly how much time he's got to go now?
His coach is probably throwing himself off the bridge in the River Thorn into the river, because I would be, because I wouldn't know what to do. I really wouldn't know what to do.
I think he'll get this fish, providing
That's
it's hooked
there.
in the mouth, he'll get this
That's
fish.
there.
It really depends on where it's hooked.
It's seen this, it'll have that little flourish we spoke about earlier, Dominic, when they see the light, they have that. You're going as well, aren't you? I can see you. You're swallowing faster, mate. Yeah, this is exciting, believe me.
4 minutes to go.
He's going to get this fish in time, that's for
bag.
sure. Is it going to make up the gap?
Steve Cook must be sitting there. What is he keeping an eye on this? Of course he is.
Cookie, look. Cookie's neck's coming unscrewed. Don't worry about that.
It's Wimbledon in one direction, that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
How bad must it feel to be sitting next to someone when you've got a lead and know that they've got a pretty big fish coming in?
You think, have I got enough? Have I got enough?
Yep.
That's all you're thinking, have I got enough? And you think you haven't got enough. It's in the net. That's a quality fish.
Not 4 kilos, that's for sure.
That's definitely not 4 kilos.
Not 4, but remember he's had 3 or 4,
Yeah,
hasn't
he's
he?
had
Exactly, I was waiting for you to notice that, Dom. Giving you the chance.
Thank you, Cook.
Don't want to take all the glory, you know, it's your show. Cook's got a fish. That's a smaller fish, though. You can see the speed he's pulling it in at. Although,
it's one of the smaller fish that turns out to be a kilo and a half, yeah.
It's one of those swimming towards you ones.
That's right.
3 minutes to go.
3 minutes. This is nip and tuck supreme, isn't it?
Wonderful stuff.
Halfway through the match, I saw Steve lose one about 4 pounds. I think he's going to regret that.
First cast, Steve Jackson lost one.
They both lost one, I think, earlier.
Yeah, they did.
This one was the middle of the match when he should have got it.
Well, he worked pretty quickly to get that one in, didn't he?
Yeah.
Wasting no time. Not awfully big, but who knows? It could make the difference. It could make all the difference. Has he got?
And he's got a fish on.
He looks happy.
He's got a fish on.
1 minute to go to get this one in.
Got to wind this in. This is giving it some stick. This is what he's got to do now.
Now,
it took him a while to land the last one.
Something else, Dom. The harder you pull a fish, the harder it pulls back. He's got to keep that coming consistently. He's got to keep it swimming towards him. They can only swim one way, that's forward. If he lets it turn its head, that'll make off in the opposite direction. Unfortunately, if he lands this fish after the whistle, if this fish isn't in the net when the hooter goes, it doesn't count.
It's got to be in his landing net or his keep.
It's got to be in the landing net. It doesn't have to be in the keep net, as long as it's under control, and that's going to be there just. That's a quality fish as well. That's it. He's done it.
That might be sufficient.
Well, who knows if that's going to be enough? Now, we just don't know. There are seconds to go. He needed to make up 4 kilos.
That was brilliant. Did that well, didn't he?
Fantastic. That was just the biggest test of angling skill I've seen for years.
Is that enough?
Packed up.
Well
is that
done.
enough? Go home now.
Cookie's
got one.
Cookie's got one.
Cookie's got one.
He's got one.
10 seconds.
10 seconds left. 9, 5,
could be the
4, 3, 2, 1.
He's got it.
Look
at
that.
hooter. Steve Cook.
He's just said you beauty. You can bet that. He's just said you beauty.
They're going to check hands here, look.
I should think he is. I hope he don't get disqualified for leaving his peg.
He's just whistling in his ear, we'll share.
Now, you said they were 2 of the characters in the game.
Yeah.
It's nice to see them going at it.
It is brilliant, yeah.
Congratulating each other.
So the final leaderboard tells the story. A fantastic final minutes of a great contest. Steve Jackson finishes just 790 grams behind the new champion, Steve Cook. Michael Murgo's done superbly to finish 3rd, and young Steve Ringer has given everything in defence of his title. Peg 4 didn't work this year for Gary O'Shea, and no happy return either for 1994 champion Ian Turner, back in 10th spot. Master of Ceremonies, Alan Hughes.
We have the beautiful trophy, the Magnum of Champagne, a cheque for £25,000, and the title of the 1999 Mitsubishi Motors FishOMania VI champion goes to Retford's Steve Cook with batting line 61. Give him a hand, here he comes, the new champion.